The world moved on without him. No parades, no handshakes, no warm welcome, just an empty apartment and a phone that never rang. Jake Carter had once been someone, a decorated soldier, a protector, a hero. But now, he was just another face in the crowd, if anyone even noticed him at all. He came home to nothing but bills and empty promises. The weight of his service clung to him like an old coat he couldn't take off, suffocating him with every breath. He tried calling the VA, again and again, but every time, the line rang endlessly before cutting to an automated message. "We appreciate your service. Please hold." So, he held and held, until, eventually, he stopped calling. The days blurred into nights, and the weeks slipped by unnoticed. Jake tried to find work. He handed out resumes, shook hands, forced smiles, doing his best to look like he belonged in this world. But no one wanted a man whose hands still trembled, whose eyes darted to unseen threats, whose chest tightened at the sound of sirens. "Thanks for your service, but we're looking for someone with more experience." He wanted to scream, more experience. He had experience. Experience that no one here could even fathom. The kind that left scars beneath his skin and in the corners of his mind. But it wasn't the kind that got you hired. He turned to his old friends, the guys he used to laugh with before the war. "Let's grab a drink sometime," they'd say. But they never called back. At first, he thought they were busy. Then he realized they weren't busy. They just didn't know what to say to him anymore. His family wasn't much better. His mother fussed over him when he first arrived, but after a few months, her tone changed. "You can't live in the past, Jake," she'd say, her voice tired, strained. "We all have to move on." Move on. He wished he could. His apartment became his world, a tiny one-bedroom space with peeling wallpaper and a leaky faucet that dripped in the silence. He spent his days sitting by the window, watching the world outside, as if it were a movie he wasn't a part of. Couples walked hand in hand, kids rode bikes, people went to work, laughed, lived, and Jake sat and watched and faded. One day he tried writing down his thoughts, a letter to someone, anyone, but the words didn't come. How do you explain to people that you feel more at home in a war zone than in your own city? That you wake up reaching for a gun that isn't there? That you hear voices in the dead of night whispering in languages you don't understand? He crumpled the paper and tossed it aside. No one would read it anyway. Days passed, then weeks. The calls from his family stopped. The bills piled up. The fridge grew empty, and he forgot how many days it had been since he'd eaten. The loneliness swallowed him whole, and the quiet became too much. Sometimes he thought about walking outside and just disappearing, letting the streets take him somewhere, anywhere. But every time he stepped toward the door, his feet wouldn't move. So he stayed. The neighbors barely noticed him anymore. At first, they'd nod politely in the hallway. Then they stopped seeing him altogether. And one day, the knocking on his door stopped too. Weeks passed. The landlord grew frustrated with the overdue rent. At first, it was a letter, then a phone call. Finally, the knock came. The landlord, an impatient man in his 40s, muttered under his breath as he fumbled with the spare key. When the door swung open, the first thing he noticed was the dust, thick, undisturbed, covering the coffee table, the couch, the floor, everything. The air was stale, heavy, suffocating. And then he saw Jake, sitting in the armchair by the window, his eyes wide and hollow, staring out at the world beyond the glass. Frozen in time, gone, weeks ago, maybe more. The news ran a small story. Decorated veteran found dead in apartment after weeks. A handful of people shared it online, a few comments, a couple of fleeting condolences. Then it was gone, just like him. His mother came to clean out the apartment. She packed his things quietly, carefully, clothes still folded, medals still in their boxes, a shoebox full of unsent letters she never knew he wrote. She cried when she found the notebook sitting on the dusty table. Only one line was written inside. "I don't think I ever really came home." And just like that, Jake Carter was forgotten. The apartment was rented out to someone new, the armchair by the window replaced, the dust swept away. But late at night, some neighbors swore they could still see a figure sitting in that chair, watching, waiting, wondering if anyone would ever remember him.